What's up, mud dudes? We got a little recap on the first MUDDER in like 69 years on real life Supercross. Okay, little East Rutherford. All right, we had to take the gameplay all the way back to Supercross 3 to get on an East Rutherford track. That's why you're seeing Tomac on the Kawasaki. Okay, but actually, this is pretty sick going back to the East Rutherford track with the rain mode turned on Supercross 3. If you haven't done that, it's a pretty cool vibe, bro. It's pretty close to the real life thing, I'll tell you that. So, anyways, crazy ass race. I'm so proud of AMA. I know I've been talking about some of the decisions they've been making here recently. I haven't been the biggest fan of some of the weird inconsistencies with stuff that they've done, but bro, I tell you what, when it comes to them, go ahead and going forward with actually having the race with the mud and the rain and everything instead of like postponing it or whatever, I feel like that was such a smart move. I feel like they had to do that after everything that happened earlier in the year. I think it was Oakland that got like totally postponed. They didn't even have any of the race on the actual date that they were supposed to have it. So I just felt like a lot of people were kind of felt a weird way about that because we haven't had a real MUDDER in so long. Because a lot of times they just, if it's raining like leading up to the race, they'll just have the track totally covered or they'll like cancel press day and shit like that. You real Supercross boys already know all this, but, got to explain it for some of the people that don't really understand how it works. But basically, that's what's been happening, and with how good they can prep the track, it's just kind of turned into, you just don't have as many of those mudders like you used to have back in the Carmichael days. You boys remember all those legendary Reed, Carmichael, Wyndham, in the mud battle, Stewart, you know what I'm saying? But this was definitely one of those, and I felt like it added so much to the series as a whole, this 2023 East Rutherford mud race, because it really, I felt like it really separated the men from the boys. It really put a whole different curveball in at least one of the rounds in the series. Back in the day, they used to have, some of the tracks would be super dry, super hard packed, super blue grooved. Then you would have the mud races. Then you would have some of the races that were, pretty good prepped. You kind of had those three different things back in the day, but I felt like nowadays, it seems like you have way more of the perfectly prepped than you do the different conditions and the different really testing the riders. I think being able to ride in mud should be a requirement to win a 450 Supercross championship. That's just my own opinion. I think you should almost basically have to go out there in at least one full-blown mud race. I don't know. That's just me. I feel like it's something that adds a lot to the series. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want there to be half of the rounds to be mud races or anything like that. I can totally understand the side of everybody wanting, the good conditions for the good racing, but, the mud every once in a while creates some good racing. I felt like that was fun as hell watching that 2023 East Rutherford race, watching Barcia come through. Of course, he had to bam his way up there a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, I know in the mud, it's kind of a different animal. It's cool to see Barcia back up there again. But he always seems to have a little bit of he'll shine, somewhere, but then he'll kind of fall off the map a little bit. Hopefully the next couple years he can be a little more consistent on that. I don't know. I know he's signed for another 2 years with Gas. So we'll see what old Barcia boy can do. Tomac had an interesting day. He, slipped up in qualifying, had a weird little hand popped off for no real reason kind of thing. everybody got real worried and thought that he was hurt. And then I felt like a lot of people were thinking tonight was not going to be his night. And then when it started shitting down rain, then everybody really thought like, oh man, Tomac's going to be in trouble, you know. And I felt like Sexton was on the move in that main event, but with Barcia just like full-blown cut his ass off, dude. And like he took out Sexton in a way. So that's what kind of killed Sexton's momentum to the front. I felt like Webb was just surviving, like, period. I feel like Webb is going to be just in survival mode for the rest of the championship. I don't think he really has that win or nothing kind of mentality like Sexton has. But Tomac, on the other hand, he was able to kind of sneak up there, even with whatever, you know, little, I guess it wasn't even an injury that he had earlier, but whatever he did to his knee and all that, I guess it wasn't bad enough to, you know, stop him from getting a second place, man. I think Tomac's got this championship, bro. I think it's pretty well over with at this point, I would say. I know everybody thought the points were going to get real close, and what if Tomac and, you know, Webb battle it out and it allows Sexton to catch back up? That was wishful thinking. I think that was like a real stretch. You know, it was going to be hard for Sexton to go out there and win the rest of the main events. Everybody gets this weird vibe, like just because somebody is the quote-unquote fastest rider, they get this weird thought that they're like going to go on this big like Villapoto 6 wins in a row streak or something like that. That's not how it works, bro. Yeah, Sexton is probably the fastest, but he's nowhere near as consistent as like a Tomac or a Webb or, you know, some of them guys like that, or a Villapoto, for God's sakes, you know what I'm saying? So, but anyways, it was cool seeing them rip up that finish line jump in that 450 main event in the mud, bro. They were just all the way up the face. I couldn't have done that for $1 million. I wouldn't even have attempted that for $1 million, bro. Like, that was gnarly, dude. There was a bunch of laps they couldn't really hit the finish line. I noticed, like, at the start of the main event, bro, the reason why I got on this track on Supercross 3 right here is because this is very similar to the way that the actual 2023 East Rutherford main event looked like. This is basically exactly what the track conditions looked like right here. And it was raining. I know at the beginning of the main event, they weren't really jumping the finish line like some of the top guys, and then I guess they got comfortable enough and throughout the main event to just start, you know, sending it over that finish line, bro. That is crazy, bro. I just feel like it brings out another level of, you know, the more ballsy kind of guys, you know what I'm saying? The dudes that ain't scared to hold that throttle down and the bike's fishtailing all over the place. Wasn't Roczen up there at the start a little bit? I think he was. But, yeah, I just feel like it's like I love whenever there's at least one good mudder in a Supercross series. 2 is actually probably better, but at least one. 1 at the very minimum. 3 or more is like a little too much, you know. That's about where I would put the mudders. And typically if they don't like postpone any of the races or they don't try too hard to cover up the tracks too much and do all that shit, typically you're going to have about that 1 or 2 Supercross races where it just happens to rain during the actual main event, right? But it's not that frequent that it happens. It's really not. But I just think it really tests the riders, you know? It really brings out the best in the overall championship. Like, I don't know. And I feel like it gives people a reason to ride in the mud, gives them a reason to practice in the mud, and it gives Supercross and motocross like a certain vibe about it that is like, well, we'll ride in anything, you know, we'll ride in any conditions, rain, sheet, sleet, shit. Bro, I can't even speak right now. The Smithy boy had a crazy Saturday night, bro. There was that fight going on between Garcia and, you know, Davis, right? And also Supercross, and it was a mudder. There was a lot of shit going on, bro. But definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys thought about the mud race. I know there's a lot of people out there that have that weird opinion like we should never have a mud race in Supercross. It's really bizarre. That's always been a thing in Supercross and motocross, you know. I think it does. We've almost reached the point where, like, the tracks have become overly prepped. You know, the conditions almost become too good for, like, an overall championship. I'm okay with having the majority of the rounds being really good prepped and nice lines and you know, good conditions and stuff. But also, I think, even with the outdoor motocross tracks, I think sometimes they get too into, they over prep it, and then it takes away a certain element of the variation within the series. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think a mudder every once in a while, it allows some individuals to win and do better that might not necessarily would have been able to do better. The dry hard pack conditions are the same exact way. You know, they allow certain individuals to be able to do better than other guys because they're more, you know, consistent on the throttle control. Same way in the mud, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know what I'm saying? I just think specifically, like, in a 17-round Supercross series, you need 1 or 2 mudders, you need 1 or 2 dry hard pack blue groove style tracks that are kind of like a, you know, roached out, beat up test track, you know what I'm saying? And then the rest of the tracks can be really good prepped. That's kind of my outlook on it. That's like my perfect scenario Supercross series, as if it has, like, you know, 1 or 2 mudders, 1 or 2 dry hard pack tracks. The way it used to be was like Vegas. The finale used to be always like a pretty dry hard packed blue groove, different kind of dirt, you know, condition. But I think a lot of the fans have kind of lost their minds a little bit with that. They're always chasing this. It's got to be perfectly prepped. Let's try to get the dirt as perfect as we can get it on every round. Let's try to get the conditions as good as we can get it on every round. And then I feel like when you do that, you just miss out on a certain element. Like, I don't know, you just miss out on a certain... If every single track is perfectly prepped every time, then that in itself becomes a little bit repetitive. That in itself becomes a little bit like, you know, all them boys out there that are riding on the worst conditions or whatever. It almost seems like it would be pointless to ever ride on a track that's not like perfectly prepped brownie mix dirt conditions, which is just silly to me. That's like, you know, I thought that was such a fun race to watch, even in the 250 class, you know, seeing all them boys in the... I know Deegan struggled a little bit. That kind of brought out a little bit of a different, you know, condition, a bit of a different challenge for him. It was an East-West shootout showdown. You know, you had the Lawrence brothers out there. All the points were on the line. It was like, oh shit, is anybody really going to mess up in the mud and mess up their championship? There's something so fun about that when the points are on the line and you have like a really dramatic, you know, different sort of dirt or like dirt conditions, you know. It brings out a different excitement level. I feel like it brings out a different energy to the viewing experience of the actual race. And sometimes when it's always perfectly prepped, it takes out an element of that excitement. And I really felt that excitement last night again.